Hello everyone, my name is Jordan and I am joined by Kurt, and we both just got done finished playing Blair Witch, the new first-person horror game developed by Bloober Team, which is the team that developed Layers of Fear 2, and Observer. So they know how to make a horror game. They've done it plenty of times before. So Kurt, you and I both got the chance to play it. What are your initial impressions on your time with the game?
What I saw of Blair Witch, I really thoroughly enjoyed. I've played a few other titles by this company, and while I think what they do is really good in some places, there's other places that I think kind of fault. Most specifically, Layers of Fear 2, there's something that's chasing you, but it feels like almost arbitrary in the sense that you are forced to have to figure a way around this thing. And what Blair Witch is doing really interesting, or something that's getting me excited, is that it's adding a few extra tricks in the bag that make you feel like you're actually doing something. Whether that's like you have an inventory, you have something more than just having the runaway.
Yeah, I would say one of my favorite aspects of Outlast, which is a game very much like Blair Witch and like Layers of Fear and whatnot, is that it does a very good job of teaching you what you're supposed to do to solve a problem that's coming up instead of just failing over and over and over again. And the original Layers of Fear does that pretty well, and Layers of 2 and Outlast 2 don't do that very well, but Blair Witch does this phenomenally well. It introduces very simple concepts at the beginning, like using your flashlight to scare away ghostly apparitions, or listening to Bullet, your dog, in order to like figure out where those ghostly apparitions are before starting to throw all these things at you at the same time and being like, oh, I know what I'm supposed to do, so I'm not just going to fail outright. And when you do quote unquote die and like have to start over again, it doesn't feel like you were cheated. Blair Witch is always trying to help you move forward, whether it's something as simple as just there's like a light source in a specific distance at a certain angle, so you know that you're supposed to be walking in that direction, to something as simple as Bullet sometimes wanders off and he comes back with something. You're like, oh, what is this that you found? Or you wonder where he's gone off, and you can like click the left bumper to have him like say like, hey, Bullet, where are you? And he'll like bark a few times like, oh, I should probably just head in that direction.
Let's get into that too. Something that a lot of these games lack is you're usually alone. And I think that's a good thing in when developing fear and making you feel alone. But we can't forget that this game has a good boy. It is Bullet. Could be the best boy of 2019 so far. We don't know. Don't hold me to it. But it's good to, this time around, you're accompanied with something that's helping you on your journey, but something that also gives you weight. It allows you to build attachment to something rather than just being by yourself wandering through this environment. And something that we kind of learned while we were there is that Bullet is more than just this companion who's just with you. He's somebody who's going to help you. He's also something you punish. Like, you don't always have to praise him. You could actually tell him he's doing a bad thing.
I would say if you think that Bullet is wandering off too often and he's like dealing with supernatural forces that he shouldn't be trying to protect you from, you can scold him. And depending on whether you praise him and scold him in like different scenarios, we were told you'll get different endings to how the relationship ends between you and Bullet, which I'm very curious to see how that works out, because as you said before, we don't typically get horror games where there's a companion character kind of there with you, and so I'm interested to see how a changing relationship between you and another character can influence how alone or supported you might feel at the end of the game.
And something we haven't even touched on is the camera. So you mentioned Outlast and how important the mechanic of a camera is in Outlast. But what's being done in Blair Witch is that it's an item in the midst of many items that you have, whether it's your cell phone, a walkie-talkie, a flashlight, but the camera is also used to solve puzzles. So you find tapes around the world, and when you watch these tapes, they're usually video of the area you're in, but what's so fascinating is that a door may be closed in the reality you're living in the game, but when you watch the video, you might see a character on the tape go through that door, and if you pause the camera at that certain time, it might open the door in reality.
I would say it leaves the door open in your world, and the camera can be used to solve all these things. Outlast's camera just has night vision, which is a very helpful tool for surviving Outlast's dark world. But yeah, Blair Witch, it's like you have a night vision mode, you have a like sensor mode that allows you to see ink on the wall that you can't see with the naked eye. Like you said before, you can rewind and fast forward through tapes to solve environmental puzzles. There just seems to be more you can do in Blair Witch. And even if it's kind of tricking you into the assumption that's like, oh, I'm trying to figure out how to solve this problem in like one of many different ways, like, it's still a game that's very linear. Like, it's a horror game. It's designed to be solved in a very specific way to put the scares and the tension in the place that it has to be, but it does it in an intelligent way that makes you feel like you are actually solving a puzzle instead of just wandering around in the dark looking for the next exit that you're supposed to find.
And something else that's kind of being done in Blair Witch that isn't as frequently done in horror games of this nature is that Ellis, the main character of the game, also equally has a presence, a voice.
I would say he speaks to himself, he speaks to Bullet sometimes. I assume it's his ex-girlfriend, Jess, calls him on the phone and he talks to her.
He's a detective with a troubled past.
Which has never been done in a horror game before.
Never been done before.
But Blair Witch is doing it, and that's fine. You know, if there's a method and way to do that and resurface it in such a way that is interesting, then why not? Let's have our grizzled detective with a troubled past. We're talking a lot about this game, and we like it, but I think something that's even more fascinating, or at least adds to something that makes me more interested in the game, is, of course, the history of the Blair Witch franchise.
This isn't like Outlast or Layers of Fear, which is like a brand new concept. Like, Blair Witch is building on a lore that already exists and has existed for 20 years now.
That in of itself is hopefully inviting to a new audience, in the sense that for us, 20-somethings, we are familiar with the cultural phenomenon that Blair Witch was in 1999.
I would argue it was like the thing that jump-started the found footage movement that led to Paranormal Activity and that type of horror.
And on top of that, internet marketing. It was notorious for using the internet to make it seem like this was something that really happened in 1994. This case of these three teenagers, these three kind of aspiring filmmakers went to go make this documentary about this myth, this witch. And what you see is what they captured only up until a certain point. Kind of when it came out, when it was announced at E3, it honestly was a little out of nowhere. It was really, truly unexpected, because this is something that hasn't had a real proper video game representation, let alone a good representation, since 1999. We've had two other movies, one of which nobody really talks about, and then a pseudo-sequel remake that came out in 2016, which more or less clearly didn't have the impact that the film did in 1999. So why now for this game? Well,
we don't know.
It's 20 years later, actually, the 20th anniversary. But it is interesting, like, you know, to pick this franchise up and try and do something with it that is a direct, almost sequel but prequel to the 1999 film, because this takes place in 1996, 2 years after the 1994 case of Blair Witch. But all said and done, for what it's worth, and kind of the off-took surprise I think I myself at least had with the announcement of this game, I'm really kind of excited and interested to see what this is going to be in late August when it comes out.